Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Amrit Sanjeev.
I know, right after lunch, you guys are all settled in. I will not let you sleep. I'm going to be really loud, and we're going to talk about Android for the next 30 minutes. Android O, to be specific. What I want to do in the next 30 minutes is not to cover a comprehensive list of things that we actually released in this version, but to highlight a few things that you might want to grab your attention as changes that might break your apps or changes where you might need to adapt your apps to, and also some of the new features. So 2 buckets of information, things that you should take attention towards when you're running for compatibility tests, and the new features that are released in this version so that you could actually augment to the experience that you already have on your apps. Let me dive into it. Timelines-wise, if you haven't started testing on O, you should scramble up, really start doing this now, because as per the timeline, the versions have been released, the final APIs are out there. This is a good time for you to start testing against it and start building for the next features, so that when the final release is out and users upgrade their devices, your apps work as expected. So from a developer priority perspective, you need to do it in this order. You want to start with compatibility. So in compatibility, what you really need to do is to check how your app is running against a new version of the OS. Is everything running as expected? There are some changes that I'll talk in further slides, which you might want to take a deeper look at to understand whether that's affecting your code base, and you're working towards it. But you're not targeting O at this level. You're just ensuring that if somebody upgrades, your existing app works as intended. Once you've done that, the next phase would be building for O. That's where you want to add the new features that we've released. That's where you want to target to O. So do it in this order. Don't do it together. Don't do it like where half of compatibility is done and half new features are out there. That might lead to your app stability going down. So follow this order in which you want to update your apps. Let's dive deep into it. The first things, there are things that you might want to kind of look at and seriously deep dive into, look at your code, analyze the behavior of your app, and ensure that nothing breaks. First one I want to call out is notifications. This is something all of us have in our applications. Is there any app that does not use notifications here? One hand out of this whole audience raised it. I hope you start using it. This is a good way of engaging your users. But again, when the team looked at it, there were 3 things that the team actually evaluated. One was attention-based sorting. From a user's perspective, you need to show the notification that's most relevant to the user at the highest importance. That's one thing. The second one is add a visual stability, and third is in terms of animations and things like that, so that user experience continuously improves further. But the thing that you want to kind of be sure of is to use notification channels. Notification channels basically, let me call out a scenario. All of us have apps on our device, and we get a lot of notifications from these developers. Some of them are not very relevant for us. Some of them are very relevant. It could be a bank app which says offers on personal loans. It could be that they also have a security update. But regularly, if you're getting this personal loan or a change in interest rate and things like that, and you say that, oh, I don't want to listen to any of the notifications, you will also end up missing the security update or a phishing or a fraud detection or something which needs your urgent attention. You might miss that notification too. But with notification channels, what developers could do is to bucket their types of notification into different channels, and then the user can specify properties on this channel. I could say that I don't want to get any of the marketing messages. I want to get all the security updates, if there are 2 buckets like that decided. So that gives a lot more control to the user. The user can also say, I don't want to listen to any of the notifications, or I want to see all the notifications from this app. But this avoids the problem of the common notifications that you would actually put out, which certain users don't like, then removing the entire channel altogether. They say that, okay, I don't want any notification from this app anymore. Note, with channels, you have finer control over this. The other thing to note is, if you don't use notification channels and you target O, your notifications won't come up by default. So this will break notification system if you've built one and you don't add channels to it. So that's something that you got to think of. The second one is in terms of the attention-based sorting that I talked about. Now, any ongoing activity would be actually in O would be sorted the highest. So that needs the most amount of attention. It could be something like a foreground service that's happening right now, a call that is continuing, a media player that is running. These will have the highest priority and they'll come highest. Then it would be things like person-to-person communication, your chats, things like that would come next. Then you have general information, general notifications under that. And the last one would be just informational notification, which would be like file download completed, things like that. That would be sorted the last. So you want to kind of specify appropriately what your notification type is like too. In O, there's one more feature called dots or badges. We call it dots. It allows developers to kind of show the notifications if the launcher allows it as a dot on in the app icon. So when you long press the app icon, all the top non-action notifications are shown as a dialog. Like the shortcuts that you had in N, if you would long press, you get the shortcuts in the app, right? Very similarly, you also get the unactioned notification up there. This avoids your notifications being shown along with everything else, but this requires the launcher also to support it. But this is a good feature to add to your app so that you can actually specify those notifications and the action comes in, because on the icon, you'll have a dot signifying there's some action that you might want to take. So that's something that you want to think about notifications. Quickly looking, this is one area where everybody wanted to put a lot of attention, background limits or background and location limits. These were two areas where Android developers really had to change some of the code to fix or to make their apps work around the same way as they did earlier. In O, if your app is in the background, then it cannot start and run a service in the background. A foreground app can do it, and the intermittent state of somebody starting in the foreground, when the app is in the foreground, you started a background service, and then the app closed, doesn't mean that your service gets killed immediately. For a couple of minutes, it's allowed to run, and after that, it gets killed. You cannot infinitely run background services, and this was done primarily to kind of keep battery life of devices in check. Because every app, or a lot of the apps, are doing a lot of work in the background. These consume battery, resources, not only in form of battery, also in form of RAM. All of these are consumed by these background processes. Now, that doesn't mean you can run anything in background. You have to run it as a foreground service. So if your app if your app requires to do something without having it on foreground, you need to run a foreground service rather than a background service. What it does is it'll put a notification informing the user that, hey, this is happening. If you would look at maps today, Google Maps, and you start a navigation, you will see a foreground service, and that the location tracking is based on a foreground service, and that notification will remain throughout. A green notification will be there in your notification tray all the time. The second one that I want to call out is on broadcast limits. There is only a set of broadcasts that are allowed in O. Basically, anything outside of that, whatever you declare in your manifest, the ones which are most commonly going to affect you, network, state change, listener. Read SMS. You won't get these broadcasts anymore in O. And this will break. If you look into read SMS, there's another API called SMS Retriever that you should use in order to kind of get the same functionality of reading an OTP, but that will also allow you to read without having SMS permission granted. Only that OTP message will be allowed, the app will be only allowed to read that particular OTP message using the SMS Retriever API. So there are changes, but there's also workarounds or alternate APIs that you should use in order to solve this. So if you have OTP and using read SMS API, if you run it on O, you're not going to get that particular broadcast so that you have the trigger to start fetching from the SMS. You have to use the SMS Retriever API to move around it. Location also has certain limitations. In background, location, basically, you're only going to get updates only a couple of times an hour. And you need a trail of the location. Instead of requesting every single time, what you might want to do is to use the bashed API, which will give you a list of the known or tracked locations over a period of time. And that will allow you to maybe trace the user's path and things like that. When you want to do that, you want to use the bashed location API. You also want to kind of use geofencing API in conjunction with location, the Fuse location provider, to kind of work around this limitation of having it coming up only a few times. There are a few recipes that we'll be publishing, and you can take a look at that and understand that in more detail. When it comes to location, you can also get location from a foreground service. If you're running it as foreground service, there's no difference. It runs in as it is running on API 25, so no difference would be there. But when you're doing it in background, then you have this limitation coming in. Geofencing has certain time limits changed right now, which makes it 10 times more efficient. But instead of a couple of hundred milliseconds, it's now about 2 minutes is when it actually gets updated, roughly around that. So it has become efficient, but at the same time, it'll take a little more time to kind of update users to you. Update the events to you. And from a sensors perspective, we've done a lot of work in O for that. We have dynamic sensors this time, which allows you to add external sensors to your device and read it, and your apps can read it natively. You might want to add an environmental sensor to your device, and then your apps can read this natively, and there's a lot of standardization on the interface that has happened with respect to dynamic sensors. Direct sensors for virtual reality applications, that's something that has happened here. The calibration algorithms for contextual APIs have been improved. There's a lot of machine learning models that were applied on it to kind of make it more relevant. Earlier, situations like, oh, I was driving, then the car stopped, it might detect it as me walking, or cars really slow, it detect me walking, and things like that are now avoided, and a lot more realistic perspective of it is actually shown due to the machine learning models that were applied on it. And again, some of the low latency body detector APIs are there. And there's something called as Android Sensor Hub. How many of you guys know about this? Just a show of hands. Very few? Okay. In a lot of times, in Android, one of the things that has happened is there's a new chip that is added to the whole stack, which kind of does the sensor management. It's not run on the main application chip, but on something smaller, which is more power efficient and can run more frequently. And that is what is supplying all the sensor data back. So this is something that allows a lot of new and faster tracking of information. Like watches like this can track every push-up that you take or every bicep curl that you do. It can actually track accurately because it can get that movement and learn much faster the patterns. And they are very power efficient because of that. You should read up on that. We have a whole page on the documentation on DAC about it, developer.android.com. And that is a pretty interesting thing to exploit on. When it comes to support library, one of the major changes that has been done with the 26th release is that the minimum SDK supported, or the minimum API level supported, has been moved up to 14. If you have apps that support before that, yes, this might be something that you want to take care of. But if you update to the latest, the advantage of doing that is you have 1.4K less methods from a method count that gets added. Because you use a support library, the amount of methods that get added to your DEX limit, or your ever-approaching DEX limit, if you're not multi-dexed yet, this reduces it by 1.4K again, and a lot more classes can be removed with this particular level that is updated. We also have a Maven repository, a new Google Maven that we've added. This means that every time we update the support library, you don't have to download the entire support library to a local Maven, which was the case before. Now you can add like one Maven line, and the Gradle, it will automatically, while you're compiling, it will automatically fetch the changes for you. Again, an issue tracker is there for reporting issues and interacting and getting data much faster. So if you find issues with Play services, libraries, or the support libraries, please actually add it to the issue tracker. Don't assume that everybody knows it, because adding priority to a particular bug helps us also prioritize. So a lot of times developers know a bug, then they go check the tracker, they see, oh, this bug is already filed, and they leave it at that. But add a comment to it, because the more people say that this is a problem, the more important that it gives us data to understand that it's more important. So use the issue tracker to track any issues that you find while you're actually working with these libraries. Support library also has things like XML font, downloadable fonts. This is a really cool feature that we've added. It has the entire Google Fonts catalog as a font provider, which means 800 fonts without you access to 800 fonts without you bundling it down into your app. Which means if you are actually using a font which is there on Google fonts, you can actually specify, and a font provider will fetch that information and show it to you. This has two advantages. One, your app is not bundling that information, so your app size reduces. So you have 5 fonts, each 500K, that's 2.5 MB. You can remove that 2.5 MB out of your app. Secondly, the fonts provider, if you have 5 apps which all use 5 of these fonts, all of the 5 apps will load these fonts into memory, which means more memory is used. 5 copies of the same font gets loaded into memory. When you use the fonts provider, only 1 copy is shared. So the amount of data that the user downloads reduces. One time the font is available, that's shared across all the applications, which means the memory footprint is lesser, so the entire system actually runs much better. Because of all these reasons, this is something that is, and it's again all the way backward compatible to 14, so you should take advantage of it today. Emoji compatibility library. This is very interesting one. A lot of times you've seen this tofu, which is basically this square box with an X on it. They call it tofu. I don't know the rationale for it, but it's a nice name. Let it be that. That's basically because the font, so basically the emoji is not supported by the platform at that point. And the emoji font file is actually part of the OS, or it's part of the build. So it can't be updated dynamically. Now with the emoji compatibility library, what happens is, the way it checks is that when a particular Unicode is passed for that emoji, it checks in the system emoji font, and if it's not available, it'll actually look at the compatibility font and then actually show. So that way you can dynamically update it, or the system can dynamically update newer supported emojis, and less of tofus will start coming on the screen. Auto text view, auto-sizing text views. This was third-party libraries a lot of us have used, where third-party libraries did this work. Now it's part of this support library, which means you should use that and then remove the third-party so that your method count as well as your library dependencies reduce. This allows for your characters or the text to be sized according to the size of the text view. So if you're supporting multiple densities, multiple screen sizes from a TV down to a phone, then this kind of helps you automatically scale it to the right way. This is quite useful. A lot of times people have used third-party libraries for this, and now we've just added it into support. So if you're using it, see whether you can replace it with the support so that you reduce the method count for it. With that, let me jump onto some of the new stuff that is actually added. The adaptive icons. So if you have a global app which supports a lot of launchers, what happens is each of these launchers have their own type of icon configuration. Like some of them are square, some of them are rounded, some of them are rounded edges. So what happens is a lot of times in order to be like everybody else in the system, these font files have to be added to your app. And then appropriate fonts have to be, appropriate launch icons have to be shown based on the launcher. With O, one of the things that happens is you can actually provide the background and the foreground assets, and then a mask is applied by the launcher so that it would look consistent consistent with the launcher's specifications. So that way, your icon specification, one specification can be given, and that can be used by and added. The mask can be added by the launcher, and then have consistent specs coming out for all the icons that are there, all the icons that are there for the apps. So this is one, and you can also add behavior to it to show, like the one I've shown here, it moving a bit or pulsating, things like that can be added in order to express or bring attention to the user, attention of the user. Pinning shortcuts is another thing. Like you had shortcuts in N where you long press the icon and you get a list of shortcuts. Pinning shortcuts is basically a quick way to go to a task by adding an icon to the screen. So when you actually click on adding on a pinned shortcut, what it does is it launches the app and into the task that you want. Basically a shortcut, you don't have to long press and select the shortcut. You can take the pinned shortcut icon and click on it and directly launch the app from there. So this kind of helps you do things much faster. Picture-in-picture, again, now supported on the platform. This allows you to kind of resume or continue your video playback. That's a classic example. You see it in YouTube, where video playback, where another activity is there in the background for you to work with. So you can actually show picture-in-picture sort of a mode. It was there in Android TV earlier. where when somebody could browse the channel, the current playing channel would actually show as a smaller picture on the TV interface. The same thing can be done in tablets or phones starting now. When you look at multiple windows, in Android O, one of the things that if you have multiple displays, your app can select to use both of it, or you can move, move your display from one window to the other. It allows you to use both screens more effectively, but thing to remember there is only one of the activities is going to be in the resumed state. It's not running two activities parallelly. No, that never happens. It is just one activity running, but two displays can be used more effectively. And color management, those who are actually working with photography apps or video reproduction or anything that has to do with accuracy of color, now there's a wider gamut of colors that are actually supported. And there's a whole talk on it on at I/O that you should actually watch if you want to get the details of this. This is really interesting stuff. Roman had actually talked about this one. The whole video, it's a good watch if you want to take time on that. I talked about picture-in-picture earlier, so let me move on. Autofill framework. There's a lot of times when typing on a small screen is cumbersome. You're in a moving vehicle, and you're going through a bad patch of road. You won't be able to type in your email ID or password properly with a small screen. That's where a lot of these apps, in scenarios where you're logging in, where your email is typed in, or your credit card number is typed in, those sort of things are places where you wanted autofill to happen, where the forms can be autofilled by. So now there's an autofill framework where your apps can take advantage of by providing hints and asking you to fill, or you can write application using these APIs to behave as the app that actually stores the information, basically provide as an autofill provider. So earlier, autofill providers used to take the permission of write on screen and then write on top of screens and things like that. You don't really need to do it. A much more secure and better performing way, better performance is attained through the new APIs that are there. So you could actually use this. When it comes to animations, there's a lot of emphasis given on natural motion, and there's the physics. There are two basic ones that are there, like spring and spring-based one, and also the bounce. So there are two ones that are actually two animations that are given in the first set, but a lot of it is actually physics, real-world physics-based. So things will actually behave more. The animations will look more natural if you apply on that using these animation libraries when you actually do it. And again, it's part of support, so you can actually get it backward compatible again. Media. Media apps have a lot of new things that are there. They have metrics which get codec duration, all these things. They have better playback, better seeking. There's improvements in all these spaces. In recording, instead of locking down to one track, one audio track and one video track, now you can add multiple tracks using an add track call. Multiple tracks to your audio, multiple tracks, you can mix stuff. So all these new features are there in the API. This is something that you should explore, and this opens up a lot of possibility to create new types of apps and new experiences on existing apps, new features that earlier were very difficult to kind of come with. And, and also these metadata tracks that are supported. So all these things are going to help you increment the experience that you already have on your apps. With WebView, one of the areas where people want a lot more help. I've heard a lot of people complaining about this, but WebView has couple of new APIs. One of them is a version API. Basically, you can query the version of WebView that you are going to run your code on, and then decide to run differently or take a different code path. So the version API will allow you to get that information there. Then Google Safe Browsing is there, which when you add a line to the meta tag, what happens is it will check against the Google APIs whether it's safe to kind of take the user to that site that you're requesting the WebView to load. So that is something that you might want to turn on your applications to avoid any phishing and stuff, any fraudulent activity, because there's a WebView on that. And then there is termination handler. This is really cool because there's a renderer and this is a multiprocess. The new one is multiprocess enabled. What happens is if your renderer crashes, that crash gets propagated to your app and your app crashes at times. Termination handler allows you to capture those information in terms of low memory crashes or just because of low memory or render thread being removed by the system or render thread crashing itself. Those sort of situations can be handled with using the render thread API and not allow that error to propagate back and crash to your app. So you might react to it. You can also set process priority to the threads or the multiprocess one so that you decide which one gets more priority on your screen. And if your web view is not of that priority, you want to reduce that priority down. So those are some of the things that you want to do with the web view part of it. This helps you kind of improve stability of your app and also ensures that you have a lot more, the user has a consistent experience even when he's actually using a low-end device, even when it's low-end device, or it's actually browsing to sites which you're not very comfortable with or not very sure about. This safe browsing API will help. Your version API will allow you to kind of fragment. I mean, if there's a fragmentation that you see and you find a difference, I mean, you want to run different code for a different different version of WebView, use an API for doing that. And with that, let me come to the last slide where the contextual experiences. You have Wi-Fi Aware, which is a new platform which allows you to kind of discover devices around you, discover and connect, and you don't really need an API endpoint for this. That's the best part of it. So these devices, it could be that I have some file that I have on a device. I could just share it with some of my friends here by just discovering the device and sharing it directly. I don't really need to be connected to a common VPN, a common APN or anything. You can use this and share information that way. The second one is in nearby connections, the semantic type support. That's useful when you're dealing with IoT and experiences with respect to contextual experiences. It really helps you kind of work with it, avoiding all the complexity under the hood. And one of the things I really want to call out is the awareness API, which is drastically improved. You really want to kind of go back and try it one more time if you have left it earlier, because there's a lot of algorithm changes that has happened, and its detection is much better. And it also has newer types of activities detected. Like this watch, for instance, basically detects walking, running, push-ups, sit-ups, all these exercises it is able to detect accurately. And basically, this is all improvements in the API. So you might want to kind of see whether that is going to add experiences to your application. I know I talked a lot about a lot of things, and this is by no means a comprehensive list like I mentioned before. But these are some of the things that you might want to kind of look at in order to kind of improve the experience that you have. And don't forget to run the compatibility tests right now, this week, or for a couple of weeks or a couple of weeks till the final release is out, because that's really important that you test your apps against the latest build and see that experience. Like the background limits, the broadcast, location, these are all areas where you might have to rewrite some part of your code. And that is something that you want a little bit of time to think through the algorithms, think through it, and test the behavior changes. So don't wait till the final version of the OS is out there and users start complaining. With that, I'll close. Thank you.